The remake of Resident Evil 4 has just been announced, and it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna change and what's gonna stay the same. In this video, I'll be going through 20 things that I wanna see in the upcoming modern retelling of Resident Evil 4. If you enjoy this type of content, consider subscribing and hitting that like button. And even if that's not gonna happen, it's not a problem. If there's a channel you enjoy watching and haven't subscribed to yet, consider going to their channel and make their day. Number 1. No QuickTime events. In 2005, QuickTime events were an interesting novelty and gave games a brand new form of interactivity. Resident Evil 4 was one of the very few games where QuickTime events didn't feel out of place. Unfortunately, these mechanics are superficial and don't really add anything to a game, and this extends all the way to melee attacks. Resident Evil 4 is a survival horror game that is plagued with way too many action prompts, which has tainted its reputation to a point where many don't even consider it a survival horror game. I personally think it's one of the best survival horror games when it wants to be, but melee attacks like the roundhouse kick and the suplex just feel so out of place. Even more so when you consider that enemies' heads can explode from these attacks. I don't believe they have a place in the remake, and if they do, they should be added very late into the game or as unlockable abilities in New Game Plus. Number 2. The dodge system from Resident Evil 3. Since the melee attacks come across a bit too silly in Resident Evil 4, I think the best alternative way to show Leon's athleticism is to give him a dodge move. Resident Evil 3's remake created the ultimate dodge system for the franchise, and I would love to see it fleshed out for Resident Evil 4. Number 3. The block and parry system from Resident Evil 8. Another way to flesh out defensive options without delving deep into action-heavy territory is to give Leon the ability to block and parry. This was somewhat useful in Resident Evil 8 for shoving enemies away for crowd control, and it could be fleshed out even more in Resident Evil 4. With the proper balancing, parrying could be a welcome addition. Equipping the knife or going in bare-fisted can allow you to strike back with a punch or a stab, and then with two-handed weapons like a shotgun or a rifle, they won't allow you to parry, but the longer barrels can act as shields, negating most of the damage. Number 4. Laser sights. The first trailer for Resident Evil 4 Remake has already hinted at laser sights, as you can see one mounted on Luis Serra's Red 9 pistol. I'm not sure if I want all the weapons to come with a laser sight right out of the box, but it would be an amazing survival horror incentive to be able to obtain laser sights for most weapons by the end of the game. Number 5. A massive Metroidvania castle. Even though Resident Evil 4 is one of the best linear games ever designed, I wish we could get a massive open-ended castle similar to Resident Evil 3.5, the RPD from RE2, and the Spencer Mansion from RE1. The castle in Resident Evil 8 was also one of the best locations of that game, but it fell short due to how linear and bare bones it all felt. With the foundation already laid out from Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil 4 could build on top of that and create an impressive castle that lives up to the franchise's standards. Number 6. Stalkers and Pursuer type enemies. Stalkers have returned as a staple enemy ever since Resident Evil 7. Unfortunately, the last few Stalker enemies such as the Nemesis and Lady D felt underutilized. Resident Evil 4 Remake has the opportunity to convert iconic enemies like Dr. Salvatore, Torres Mendez, Verdugo, the Iron Maiden, and the Regenerator into excellent Stalker type enemies. Number 7. Bring back all of the weapons and add more. One of the greatest things about Resident Evil 4 was the quality over quantity approach for the weapons. Every single weapon is useful and can carry you for the whole game. The remake has an opportunity to expand on the variety of builds that you can create. This can be achieved by adding new weapons and items you can find in the game's world or purchase from the merchant. I'd like to see 5 new weapons added to the game: a double-barreled shotgun, an assault rifle, a grenade launcher, a crossbow/javelin gun, and a rifle with a bayonet, similar to the bayonet attachment that was cut from Resident Evil Village. Number 8. Exclusive upgrades and decision making. The exclusive upgrade option in Resident Evil 4 is one of the reasons why it is infinitely replayable. Exclusive upgrades can enhance a weapon beyond its threshold or completely change its functionality. I want to see it fleshed out even more. What I want to see are exclusive upgrades that force you to make a critical choice. This would be an upgrade system similar to Doom Eternal's, but the closest thing it actually resembles would be the upgrade system from Project Warlock. Every weapon in that game can be converted into one of 2 different weapons. weapons, and every conversion matters since it cannot be undone. This type of weapon balancing would work beautifully into the theme of survival horror. Essentially, you would be tripling the amount of weapons without becoming too overpowered, and it can do wonders for the amount of build varieties you can mess around with. If you want to convert a standard shotgun into a long-range one, you lock yourself out from obtaining a shotgun that could possibly deal fire damage. You could convert a decent handgun into one that can do armor piercing, but you lock yourself out of obtaining a handgun with a fire rate as fast as you can pull the trigger. That way, every choice matters. Number 9. A Raid Mode. While I enjoy Resident Evil 4's Mercenaries quite a bit from time to time, Raid Mode is easily the most fun bonus mode of the franchise. You can easily sink dozens upon dozens upon dozens of hours into that mode alone. Even Resident Evil Village has it. The title might say it's Mercenaries mode, but it's really just a light version of Raid Mode, and there's no mercenaries. It's just one playable character who isn't a mercenary. Including a Raid Mode or substituting mercenaries with this mode altogether can do wonders to extend the longevity of this game. And since this is Resident Evil 4 we are talking about, I am certain they will be looking into that. And while we're on the topic, number 10, more playable characters. Speaking of these bonus modes, whichever one we get, what matters the most is getting more characters to select from. The original Mercenaries mode somehow missed out on including playable characters such as Ashley and Luis. I would love to see these characters added to the roster, including others such as Jill, Claire, Rebecca, and even Barry. Number 11, an A and B scenario. Giving Resident Evil 4 an A and B scenario would be an excellent way for the remake to stand out from the original. Since the team working on it is the same one from Resident Evil 2 Remake, the team can use that feedback from that game to come up with a more fleshed out A and B scenario. There's 3 options to go with here, or maybe 2. If Claire does end up returning, she'd be a great fit for a second scenario. But if not, you can always have a second scenario with Ashley or Ada. Personally, I'd love to see Ashley as the second protagonist. Leon could be the more action-oriented side of the campaign, and Ashley's side could play more like an old-school survival horror game. Number 12. Improving Separate Ways. Separate Ways was a wonderful addition to the base game, and it answered many questions as to what Ada was doing behind the scenes while still leaving many questions unanswered. As wonderful as it was, the quality of this side story was not on par with the campaign. It was even more linear, and it skipped to new locations without explaining how Ada got there. And while it did add a couple of interesting new weapons, there was no upgrade system to maximize the replay value. I'd like to see a more seamless interpretation of this mode, and perhaps an even lengthier one. And I'd also love to see the weapon upgrades put back into it. Number 13. More treasure and wildlife hunts. Treasure hunts are a fun way to obtain more currency to buy better items. They also offer a nice change of pace. Shooting the blue medallions was fun, and in return you could get a Punisher handgun for free. Resident Evil 8 added hunting animals into the mix, and the Duke would offer character-based upgrades in return. It wasn't as nearly as fleshed out as I would have liked it, and the upgrades were hardly noticeable. I would love to see the wildlife and upgrades expanded upon within the confines of Resident Evil 4's village and the forest surrounding it. Going off the beaten path in Resident Evil 8 sometimes led to optional mini-bosses, and I would love to see more of that in Resident Evil 4 Remake as well. Number 14. Quick weapon swapping. Having played and enjoyed the weapon swapping in Resident Evil 7, 2 Remake, 3 Remake, and Resident Evil 8, I just can't see the Resident Evil 4 Remake not including quick swapping. It both adds convenience and a layer of quick decision making between reloading your current firearm or switching to a different gun altogether in the middle of a frantic fight. Number 15. The gore system from Resident Evil 2. One of the most sorely missed features ever since the Resident Evil 2 remake is the excellently grotesque gore system. It adds an immensely responsive and satisfying gameplay feedback, and overall it just looks so cool and adds to the horror atmosphere. If Resident Evil 4 Remake is gonna be exclusive to current gen systems, I hope this feature returns. Number 16. Epic death scenes. Resident Evil 4 may not have worked as a horror game as much as people would have liked, but if it did one thing better than all the other games, it's the incredible attention to detail to the horrific death scenes. It is by far the most brutal and violent game in the series, and I would love for the remake to retain the same level of gore and dismemberment, as it adds so much to the survival horror aspect. Number 17. No enemies with guns. Resident Evil 4's island section completely jumps the shark by adding ganados that can wield ranged firearms. These are the least interesting enemies of the game, and cutting them out entirely would not only negate some of the needless tedium but also retain a greater sense of horror until the end. Number 18. No flashy item pickups. One thing that many players feel was distracting about Resident Evil 4 is how enemies not only drop ammo and health pickups, but the game even added a bright and flashy marker to indicate it. It can feel immersion breaking for some, and it can even rob the feeling of all tension from a survival horror game. Number 19. No boulders and statue chase scenes. The stupidest thing Resident Evil 4 ever put into the game were the boulders and the nonsensical statue of Salazar chasing Leon down a corridor. Resident Evil 4 is hardly shy about including cheese and campiness, but I think that these particular gimmicks went overboard. In my opinion, these things should stay where they belong, in the past. Number 20. An interconnected world with no chapter select. Resident Evil 4 Remake has great potential to create an interconnected world where you can backtrack to the village, the castle, and the island facility. The island section was by far the weakest one, and I wouldn't mind seeing it get converted into a facility similar to Heisenberg's factory, although it could definitely do with less samey looking locations. That being said, I don't want the world to feel deceitful the way it did in Resident Evil Village. That game tried so hard to make you think it's gonna be a semi-open world, but all it actually gave you was the illusion of choice. It might as well have been as linear as the original Resident Evil 4 itself. Whether the game turns out to be open-ended or completely linear, I just hope that the game would just be honest about it, own it, and make the best of it. Resident Evil 4's chapter system gave you a free save at the end of every chapter, and I think switching it out for an open-ended experience could bring back limited save slots through the use of typewriters. And given this is the same studio that did phenomenal work for the Resident Evil 2 remake, I hope they can pull off something of the same caliber with the remake of Resident Evil 4. For more on Resident Evil 4 Remake, check out my in-depth analysis video I made for the reveal trailer. And with that, the Raven draws to a conclusion. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.